Now we're gonna talk with both of you for a moment and kind of talk about how you two met and came to be. So, just kind of take turns and tell us
Okay.
how you two met.
Okay, I'll tell you, it was not by chance that we met. Their farm was a mile and a half, less than 2 miles from our farm, and their Marilyn's family would drive by our farm on the way to town every day. We saw that happening. However, um, I being 8 years older, close to 9 years older than Marilyn, I was at their farm many different times, helping her father with some light chores. For instance, during haying time, he needed someone to drive 2 horses with a rake, with a hay rake. I was the perfect person for that, even at age 12 and 13. So Marilyn was just a baby at that time. She was just a kid. So being that I knew the family and all that, our meeting was definitely not by chance. I suppose I could ask her to add something right here.
Well, I knew who he was because he'd come over and help my dad a lot, and I didn't pay any attention to him. And pretty soon, he goes away to the Navy. And when he comes back, I'm grown up. And then he looked at me differently, and he got interested and asked me out. So we dated a while.
Oh, but you had to get permission from your
Of
mother.
course I did. That was the common thing to do in those days. You had to ask. And my mother said, "Oh, that's fine. You can go out with him. No problem."
So, how long did you two go out before you got married?
With quite some time. It was probably
A year
a year and a half.
or a year and a half, yeah.
And what was going out back then? What did you do?
Go to a
Saturday.
movie.
Go to the movie on Sunday evenings. Yeah. And
Go to a
then,
dance once in a
the
while.
neighborhood kids get together and everybody was there and you play softball or just horse around.
So, how did you guys become engaged? What was the typical way to propose? And
Well, I will let him tell that story because he loves to.
Well, okay. We, excuse me. Naturally, we had been dating for quite some time, and then came the year of our engagement, which was 1950, early 1950. And I thought, I think I should ask this young lady to marry me before she gets any bad habits and starts going out with some other boys. And
Oh dear.
I did, and I said, do you think we could get married? And she, yeah, not hesitating at all. She said, yeah, that might be all right. I says, okay. Um, as soon as I'm finished with a certain job, we're going to drive to Mobridge. That was before her graduation, and we're going to pick out a ring. And we did. We drove to Mobridge on a Saturday because they went to school during the week. And we picked out an engagement ring.
You took Hilda to the jewelry store at Kirkpatrick's in Aberdeen and bought the ring and surprised me with it. Yes, you
Oh,
did.
that was a different thing I took you to Mobridge
That's
for.
right.
That was the wristwatch.
First.
Well, anyway, I picked up a ring.
Get your stories
and,
straight.
Little Hilda, I could trust her.
She
judgment,
helped
so
you.
She picked out what she thought was a nice ring. And their graduation date was set, the latter part of May, and I put on my suit and took a bath and went to the graduation exercises. And after they were all done with their caps and gowns and were standing in the reception line, I got as far as Marilyn, and I asked her to hold out her hand, and I slipped the ring on her finger, and I said, "Will you marry me?" And she said, "Yes." And then we went back upstairs into a hallway and had someone take a picture afterwards. And then it was 2.5 months later we got married.
So tell us a little bit about your wedding. What was your wedding like?
Almost a disaster. I was late.
Now, you really want me to tell this, don't you?
You may.
Well, you heard it at the, or weren't you there? The Germans from Russia.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the tape was played there about it. And anyway, the wedding was set for 7 o'clock on that evening. And we got ready, and we were on our way to Java, to the church, and we had to drive past their farm on the way. And he waved from the tractor. And we're on our way to the wedding, and he's still outside in the field. So anyway, we went on in, and we had gone early because we had things to get ready as far as the reception was concerned and things like that. Time for the wedding, no Clarence. Am I being stood up? I don't know. 10 minutes, still no Clarence. And we really got a little concerned. Of course, the first thing in my mind is, did he get hurt, fall off the tractor or something? 20 minutes after 7, he comes marching in there. And then we got married. He just had to make one more round.
Well, not only that, I finished what I had to do in the field because I knew we were going to be gone for 2 days after the wedding.
A 2-day honeymoon.
And
That was a big one.
that job needed to be finished. So I finished that, and I was alone on the farm, and the cows had to be milked. I had to get the cows in, and I had to milk them. I had to separate the milk, and I even had to take a sponge bath or something. I couldn't go dirty, and all that took a little time. But I hurried, and of course I got there before they called off the wedding.
Can you tell me a little bit about what the reception was like?
Oh, all kinds of relatives, and it was a busy time. And a crowded church basement.
Well, they all had to know the reason it was held
That you
up.
were late,
Yeah.
yes. Hilda's out there, she
And then,
knows.
When I got to town with my car, I had to park it several blocks from the church because I knew they were going to doctor it up if it was left by the church. So
Excuses,
took a little extra
excuses.
Did they still end up doctoring up the car?
they didn't get to it. I was far enough away. Yeah. They still do that nowadays. Yep.
Can you tell us a little bit about this picture here?
Well, this is the church basement with the reception. Now, this was a really old church, and the basement was not very nice, but that was the only place. I mean, we wanted to get married in that church because we grew up in it. So it's kind of a dingy basement, but this is Clarence and I cutting the cake. This is Hilda, Hilda Schaefer. Clarence's youngest sister. This is my good friend, Delphia Job, one of my classmates, who isn't with us anymore. This is Uncle Gust, Clarence's Uncle Gust from California. This is my brother Raymond. He's the one that's a year older than I am.
Was your wedding dress bought or did you make it?
No, I just wore a white sharkskin suit. My folks couldn't afford a gown.
We went to the Black Hills, and we came home. We had arranged that we could not live at the farm because it was occupied, and so we had prearranged a room, a sleeping room in Java. And
At Katie's
the
house.
first morning that we were back, of course we always got up early because we drove to the farm. At the gate at my farm we stopped and I got out, and then Marilyn continued on over to her parents' farm, and she stayed there until it was time to go back home in the evening at 10 o'clock or whatever, and would pick me up and we would go back to town. The first morning that I was back on the farm, I gassed up the tractor and helped with the morning chores, and then it was breakfast time, and my dad was upset. And in German, you can get more upset than you can in English. And he said, "Driving around and having fun. You should be at home working."
Don't go there.
So is there anything else about the wedding day that you'd like to share with us?
It was hectic, that's all.
There was nothing
I
special.
really don't have a lot of memories about
There
that.
was really nothing special. The reason my uncle from California is on that picture as my best man, he and his wife were in South Dakota on a vacation at the time.
And he was a
I
good
had-
friend of yours.
Yeah, because when I came back from overseas and I was stationed at Long Beach, California, they lived in Burbank, which is right there. And so I stayed with them and visited back and forth a lot with them while I was still out west. And I thought, well, and then since they were in South Dakota, I said, "You want to be my best man?" He said, "Certainly, do that."
And how long have you two been married?
57 years.
Okay. I have one concluding question, and you can guys each take your turn with answering this, and then we'll wrap
Okay.
everything up. The question that I always end an interview with is, why did you decide to participate in this interview today? So we'll let you go ahead and go first.
You decided because I decided.
He decided.
He decided? And why did you decide?
No, it sounded like an interesting project.
For several reasons. One is to preserve our heritage, leave something for our children in the way of our life history. However, I became aware of it through the newspaper. And as soon as I had read that article and had seen that you were involved in it and Mike Miller had something to do with it, I thought, this is the thing for us to do. Let's have you here and become part of this project, and hopefully that we can be part of this documentary so that our children will have something to see, and the things that we remember as youngsters and growing up would be preserved in a way that it shall not be forgotten.
Okay.
Is there anything else either of you would like to add?
Did he talk about our children at all?
Nope, we don't know how
No.
many children you have.
See,
How many children do you have?
we have 4 children,
Okay.
3 boys and 1 girl. The 3 sons are Stephen, the firstborn, Clyde is the second, and William is the third. And Amy is the daughter, and she's the youngest of the children. Our oldest son owns a roofing company in Bismarck and keeps quite busy. He has no children of his own, but raised a stepdaughter. Clyde has a wife and a daughter who is 23. I think she's 23. Her name is Sarah, and she's an adult now and is working. And Clyde is an entertainer and a musician. He is a comedian that travels all over the United States, does a lot of local performances. He's a comedy person, but he's also a professional singer. Does a lot of funerals, a lot of gigs and things like that he has to do. Performs in Medora every summer and has his own show there with a magician. And William is the assistant director at the YMCA locally. He has 4 daughters, ranging from 10. Well, Elise is 10, Grace is 7, Claire is 2.5, and baby Hope is 5 months. He's married to Lisa, and they have a nice little family. Amy lives next door. She's our daughter. She's married to Jay Robinson, a Bismarck person that was in the Air Force and since then has become a pilot. He lives in Seattle, and they own a home in Bismarck, so they commute between the 2 homes. And she helps me out in the antique business. So that takes care of that,
Anything else?
unless you have
Our
questions
oldest
about.
boy, Steve, became interested in motorcycles at probably age 15, and so for many years we traveled every Sunday to motorcycle events. He was good at it, what he did. He competed in the state fair in Minot one year against professionals, which he was considered not one of, and did remarkably well against experienced riders from California. And those were the Sundays that I enjoyed so much because he let me be his pit man. Oh, that was a big. I got to start the motorcycle for him and have it gassed up and all ready to go. Yeah. Those were fun times, even though it meant being away from home every Sunday, but we were somewhere, wherever there was an event.
I've got to say something here. We grew up very frugal. We didn't have much as children or much growing up. After we got married, it was still, money wasn't easy to come by. And I always saved and got by with as little as possible. And that started me in the rummage sale type thing. So now I'm a rummage sale person. And I started looking around and buying things that were absolutely necessary to help you get by, you know. But then I would spot antiques, and I had an eye for it. And I started collecting antiques in that manner. And so most of the antiques that I have cost me very little money. And this is how, after you go to garage sales for a while and you start accumulating, the house gets full, and then you need to be a dealer. So Amy and I are dealers, and that's our passion.
Okay. Well, thank you both for a wonderful, wonderful interview.